Clothing stores profit every single time you throw away a garment instead of mending it. Hannah Yoder, an Amish seamstress from Lancaster County, has never thrown away a piece of clothing in her life. She learned her first repair stitch at age 7. That was 1693's living legacy in her hands. By the time she was 12, she could fix any hole in any fabric with nothing but a needle and thread. 4 hand techniques. Any fabric. 0 cost. 0 experience required. There is an old saying among the Amish that every garment has more life in it than the whole suggests. It is not a figure of speech. It is a rule that has been lived, stitched, and handed from mother to daughter for more than 300 years, tracing back to Jacob Amman's community of 1693, where frugality was not a personal virtue, but a shared obligation. You did not waste what God provided. A worn sock was not rubbish. It was an unfinished repair, waiting for someone with a needle and patience. Modern throwaway culture does not share this view. The fast fashion industry is built on the idea that replacement is easier than repair. And for many households, that belief costs real money, season after season, year after year. A pair of jeans with a torn knee gets bagged up. A favorite sweater with a split seam gets donated. A good wool sock with a thin heel gets binned. Each one of those decisions costs money that mending would have saved entirely. The Elizabethtown College Amish Studies Center has documented that hand-mending traditions remain actively preserved in plain communities today. These are not crafts kept alive for nostalgia. They are practical household skills taught to children as soon as their hands are steady enough to hold a needle. They solve real problems, they cost nothing, and they work on any fabric you are likely to own. What follows are 4 of those methods. Not crafts, not hobbies, skills. The kind that Hannah Yoder's grandmother taught her grandmother, passed down without a sewing machine ever entering the room. The kind the modern clothing industry has no interest in you learning. But the first method is where most people should start, and it is older and simpler than almost anyone expects. If you had asked anyone in Lancaster County about darning back in 1850, they would have told you it was the first thing every child learned. They had no idea the wider world would spend the next century forgetting it entirely. Number 1. Darning. It is the oldest textile repair in the documented Amish tradition, and it is exactly as simple as it sounds once someone shows you the logic of it. A sock lies on a plain wooden table. The heel is worn through, not torn violently, just thinned and then opened, the way fabric always fails when friction meets time. The hole is roughly the size of a thumbnail. In a modern household, that sock is finished. In Hannah Yoder's kitchen, it is a 10-minute repair. Darning means weaving new threads across the hole to rebuild the fabric structure from scratch. You are not patching over the damage. You are replacing the missing weave with your own hand. The result is a woven patch that is structurally part of the garment, not sitting on top of it. The tools required are 3. 1 needle, matching thread, a smooth round object placed underneath the hole to keep the fabric taut and give you a working surface. A darning mushroom is traditional. A soup spoon works just as well. The object is only there to hold the shape. The stitch pattern runs in 2 passes. First, you lay parallel rows of thread across the hole in one direction, carrying each row a few millimeters into the solid fabric on either side to anchor it. Then you turn 90 degrees and weave perpendicular rows through those first threads, over and under, rebuilding the grid of the original weave. You pull gently, and the new threads lock together into a small woven square of fresh strength. No knot appears on the outside, no lump, no obvious sign of repair beyond a slight color variation if your thread does not match perfectly. The wearer would understand exactly what this meant for the life of a garment. Best used on socks, thin cotton shirts, worn elbows, any place where fabric has thinned and then opened. It does not work well on thick denim or heavy canvas. For those, a different method entirely is needed. The repair holds. The sock goes back into rotation. The cost is 0. The clothing industry calls a worn sock a reason to buy a 3-pack. Hannah Yoder calls it a Tuesday afternoon. But nobody saw coming how the next method would prove even more durable on the fabrics that darning simply cannot reach. Number 2. The patch and whip stitch. and this one is built for the heavy work. A pair of denim work trousers lies across a workbench. The right knee is torn. Not frayed, torn. A clean gap in the weave from a hard fall or a caught nail. This is not a job for darning. Denim is too thick to rebuild thread by thread. It needs something behind it. The patch does not need to be purchased. It does not need to match perfectly. It needs to be cut from any scrap fabric you already own, sized slightly larger than the hole on every side, and placed behind the tear so the edges of the original fabric overlap it. The whip stitch does the rest. You thread your needle with sturdy thread, hold the patch firmly behind the tear, and begin stitching around the entire perimeter of the hole. The needle passes over the edge of the original fabric and through both layers every 2 to 3 millimeters. Over the edge, through both layers, over the edge, through both layers. The stitch wraps like a tight spiral around the wound in the fabric. Each loop of thread pulls the patch tighter against the back of the tear, locking it in place without glue, without a machine, without anything except the tension of a thread pulled snug by hand. No specialized tool exists for this. The only items on the table are a needle, sturdy thread, and a scrap from an old garment that would otherwise have been discarded. The patch can match the original fabric for an invisible repair, or contrast deliberately for a visible mend, a style choice with its own long tradition in plain communities. Best applied to denim jeans, jacket elbows, work trousers, canvas bags, any material too heavy for darning. The whip stitch holds against real stress. It does not pull loose under friction the way an iron-on patch eventually will. It is a structural repair, not a cosmetic one. The same reliance on what is already at hand that built the Amish mending tradition was about to destroy the throwaway culture's hold on this knowledge. Number 3, the ladder stitch. And this is the part where things stopped being funny. A knit sweater. Side seams split from hem to hip. The kind of repair that looks at first glance like it requires a sewing machine. It does not. There is a reason this method is still talked about among plain community seamstresses who have never once owned a machine. The ladder stitch works by placing alternating horizontal stitches on each side of a split seam and then pulling them closed. It is called a ladder stitch because of what it looks like before you tighten it. 2 rows of small horizontal bites in the fabric, connected by thread running between them, exactly like the rungs of a ladder lying flat. The technique begins from inside the fabric edge. Small horizontal bites, alternating left side, then right side, each one catching just a few threads of the folded seam allowance. The needle never passes through to the visible outer surface. Every stitch is hidden inside the fold. When you pull the thread gently, the 2 fabric edges draw toward each other. The stitches disappear inside the seam. The split closes. From the outside, there is no visible repair. The seam looks as it did when the garment was new. The Pennsylvania Amish Historical Society has documented the ladder stitch as a standard household repair method since the 1800s. It was not invented by anyone in particular. It was simply the obvious solution to a split seam when no machine was available, and it worked so well that it never needed to be replaced. Best used on knit sweaters, t-shirts, side seams, any repair where appearance matters and the damage runs along an existing seam line. It does not create bulk. It does not leave a ridge. It does not announce itself. The ladder stitch pulled tight would come back to haunt every garment ever thrown away because a seam split. But that is getting ahead of the story. Thread weaving reinforcement stops the hole before it ever starts, adding invisible strength to thinning fabric before it fails. 4 methods, 1 needle. The clothes you already own last a lifetime. Watch this video next to repair even more.